Okay, so um, so where people are at with the homework and the discussions seems to be almost knowing the right meaning of the word, but not quite. And one kind of interesting thing that I noticed has to do with the way you think about what's called collective nouns. It's handled differently in American English versus British English. And one way sort of reflects the mathematical usage of our words about seps, and the other doesn't. And sometimes when I correct you, here's what happens. You say, "Oh, I've got the right idea. He's just correcting my grammar." When in fact, to a mathematician, the meaning is different because the meaning is in the grammar sometimes. And so it can lead you then to get confused about parameter versus variable, for example. So first off, what's a set? It's a collection of things. It's like a club. You can speak of it in the singular, the club. Okay. You could say the club is large. The club has a constitution. Okay. You could never say the club are interesting people. Not in American English. You could in British English, because a collective noun, in British English is referring to the people, the individuals inside, but in American English, it's referring to the collection itself, not the individuals in it. Okay. Now let me share a screen here, because I want to get right to, so what does this have to do with statistics? So let's look at population. In American English, you might say the population is large. That does not mean each member of the population is large. It does not mean the members are large. It means the population has a large number of members. When I say the population is something, I'm speaking about a characteristic of the whole collection as a group, not something that they share with each other. Okay. So if I say the average weight of all US citizens, the population is the set of all US citizens. It is singular. It's just one group. Okay. And when I say the average weight of them, I'm not talking about any of the individuals. There might not be even one person who has exactly the average weight. And you could not look at any one person to find out, because the average weight of all of the population is a characteristic of the group, and the only way to find it out exactly would be to weigh every single individual person, add them all up, and then divide by the whatever 350 million there are of them. So the number you get at the end tells you nothing about anyone in particular. It's about the group. A characteristic of the group is a parameter. So To further illustrate characteristics of a set versus characteristics of the members, here's a set, the set whose members are 2, 4, and 100. Okay. So its size. What's its size? Its size is 3. What's its mean? Its mean or average is, let's say I get 106 divided by 3. Oh, well, whatever that is. Oh, it's a fraction. Okay. Its median is the 4. That's the guy right in the middle. Its maximum is 100. But none of these numbers, even the maximum, it's not here, that's not functioning as a characteristic of any one individual. It's a characteristic of the group. And you've got to see the whole group to figure out any one of these things. Those are parameters of the set. The characteristics of the individuals say each individual is a whole number. Or you could say the individuals are whole numbers. Each one is, they are. See, I get a lot of number agreement errors, grammar errors in the answers, but I think sometimes it's not just grammar. I think sometimes, and then correcting it, you don't know why I corrected it because you think you have their, okay. Anyhow, each individual is an even number. The individuals are even numbers, but all of these are just, evenness is a variable. It's something you determine about each one. Being a whole number is a variable. It's categorical. It's either yes or no, true or false. Each one of these either is or is not a whole number. So wholeness is a variable. Evenness is a variable. Okay. Being less than 100 or not, it's a true, false, categorical variable about the individuals. Okay. So see, in British English, you could say the population are large, and we just don't say that in American English, because what they mean is each member. But we don't do that. We just say the population is because it's a single collection. So the two languages treat collective nouns differently. Okay. So next thing. Variable. What's a variable? I want to do this one first. I want to do value of a variable versus the variable itself. Because this has a little bit to do with the difference between algebra and statistics. I'm going to go to the document camera because I want to draw some pictures. Just going to stop the video while I go over to that camera. Okay. So our population might be the set of all U.S. citizens. Now in these questions, when I ask you to identify the population, you can help yourself to get the right idea if you always start out with the set of all, start out with the set of all, or the collection of all, and then say what they are. So each individual is a U.S. citizen. So in those homework questions where you have to complete the sentence, you know, I got quite a variety of answers, like each individual is a weight, or I'm making some things up now, okay, but things like that. They would name the variable instead of the individual. Or say each individual is a sample. No, a sample's not just one. A sample might be 50 people. It's a set, it's not an individual. Okay, so each individual is a US citizen. Now, does anybody want to throw out in the chat? I'm doing this for a reason. You can do it in the private chat or the public chat. Some variables, because I want to make the difference between the variable and the value of the variable. And that distinction's also not being made much in your answers to statistic versus the value of the statistic. So value of versus the thing itself. Can you go in the chat or just open your mic and say something online? Okay, lovely. So somebody brought one out. Yeah, okay. I've got body temperature, and I've got height and age. Okay. Okay, weight, height, body, temperature. Okay. So I could give those some variable names or symbols, X, Y, Z, temperature. Now here's the thing that's a little bit different in the way you think about variables in statistics compared with algebra. You see, in algebra, the variable is an unknown number, and it would be perfectly legit to say X, little x, is 3. But over here, weight is a thing. It's an abstract concept. It's a function. You don't say capital X is 3 exactly. That's just one value of it. So if X, the function, capital X of Joe is 175 pounds. Weight, the word weight or the letter X, either one of those is the variable, but the 175 is just one among many values of the variable. It's the same variable with different values. So when I say identify the variable in a story, you don't type a number. You see how I could say identify the variable in the story, and somebody might say, 175. But it's not. The variable's the weight as a concept, as a function where you give it an individual and it gives you back a value. Did that make any sense at all? You do a thumbs up or something, or well, I think it must have. Okay. So the value of a variable, it's either a number, or if you have a qualitative or categorical variable, it could be the name of a category. The variable could be favorite color. For each individual US citizen, you ask them their favorite color. So the possible values, there's a long list, chartreuse and mauve and all that. Name of a category. Okay. All right. Now, variable versus statistic. So actually, this was the one, identifying a statistic and identifying the sample was the one y'all did best on in the homework. So a sample might be a set of 50 randomly selected US citizens. And when I say a set of, I mean a group, one group that's singular. The sample is the set. People will say, I got 50 samples, meaning they got one sample and it had 50 members. Okay? So sample is the collection. And then there are many individuals in the sample. Now, a statistic, it's a function again. So if I ask you a question and say, identify the statistic in this question, you really should not write down a number. That's the value that you got for one group of 50 US citizens, but if you picked a different group, you'd get a different number. It's still the same statistic, it's just a different value of the statistic. See? So a statistic would be something like, like the mean weight of a sample of size 50. Or let's make it easier to match the picture. Let's make it a sample of size 2. Now that's a function. You give it a sample, it gives you back a number. You guys see that all right? See what I mean? You give it a sample of 2 people, and it gives you back the average for the 2 of them. Add them together, divide by 2. So if I ask you a question, identify a statistic, you would say the words. Mean weight of a sample of size 2. It's not the specific number. And finally, parameter. So this Greek letter mu, we're using that to stand for the population mean. I ask you to identify the parameter. It's the name, not the number. And it's a characteristic of the group. Okay. Now, before I come back to the language about continuous versus discrete, or the difference versus ratio levels of measurement, I want to look at some of the stories, because the discussion assignment is pretty hard to get it totally right, because you have to make up this story and then figure out how the parts of your story match up to, population and sample and so forth. And so there are just all kinds of interesting things I can look at in your actual responses to clear it up. So it's taken me just a second here. I want to navigate over to the item, and I'll change that screen share here just as soon as I get this item queued up. Hang on, it takes me a minute to get this thing. Okay. Okay. So these are all, the discussion posts. I've got 9 of these so far, and you're supposed to read the other students' posts. You make a post, and then you read the other students' posts, and you reply. And I've set the system up so it like puts you into different groups, so you don't have to read 30 of these. You get to see like 5 or 6 of them or something. And then you respond to somebody else in that group. And it's randomized. It changes every time we do this. It'll be different groups. And so I'm going to go through the ones I have so far. And so here's a story. The person says, my population would be the population of California as a whole. And I want to specifically study all college graduates. Okay. So I understand where you're coming from. If I get real technical about the language, the first 2 sentences contradict each other. If you want to study all college graduates, then the population's not the population of California as a whole. So I'm going to put a comment here, put in a reply post, and I'll say, I think the population you have in mind is, and then here's where you can drive yourself to a suitable answer. If you just start it with the set of all, because it's always all of something. Okay, all the maybe residents of California. If you wanted to specify what you mean, okay, does that mean their mailing address is in California? Okay, does it mean that they just happen to be inside California? Does it mean they're registered to vote in California? When you get ready to do like a real research project, you have to specify real closely so that we can tell exactly whether any given individual is or is not part of the group that you intended to study. Okay, but the set of all residents of California who, and so I think what this person had in mind was who have a bachelor's or associate's degree. I can't spell. Okay. So now, the variable. Now this person says the average income of all college graduates. Well, if your population is the set of all residents who have a bachelor's degree, then each individual is a resident who has a bachelor's degree, has a degree. So when you talk about a variable, it can't be an average like that. You know, you're saying for identify a variable, you say you want to study the average. You may want to study the average. That's good. It's very good. You want to study the average. But when you identify a variable, it's got to be a function where you give it an individual resident of California with a bachelor's degree, and it gives you back a number. So your variable. Let X be the income of a one of these. But you see, now it's singular, a resident who has a bachelor's or associate's degree. Now this thing that you want to study, that's good. You want to study the average income of all these people. That's a parameter of the population. It's not a variable, because you can't find out that average without having access to all the people in the population. See the difference? So your parameter Okay, how are we doing? Let's maybe in the participants window, maybe let's get some thumbs up if you see what I've done with for this example, and you see what I mean about people like mostly kind of getting the idea, but not mapping the words up exactly right. Are there any thumbs up? Did you get what that was there? How to get some faces? Let me see. Oh, only got like one person with their face visible. Okay. Hey. Oh, there's some more. Okay. Yeah, so I guess I see some thumbs ups. Okay. Yeah. The happier looking people are showing their faces, mostly. Okay. Anyone have like a specific question up to this point that you can put in the chat or unmute and just say it? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to scroll down because there's lots of different issues. Okay. Well, here's one that was right. Says her population to study is the set of all female wild wolves in North America. The variable is the birth rate. of cubs she has in her litter each year. That's just great. You went singular on me. It's got to be singular. It's a characteristic of individuals, ones of them. And then the population is the average over the whole population. Great. Okay. Yeah, so this one, I have no problem with this one right here. Quite interesting to find the mean for first generation immigrants in the US. Perfect. So the population's the setting of all those, the set of all those, and the variable is what you measure from one of them. Okay, how many people completed the census? Let's get a show of hands. Is this a, let's ask variable.
I'm sorry, I'd like to ask a question. Is this an assignment that we're looking at right now, or is it?
Yeah, this was the discussion assignment.
Okay, this was due today?
It's due tonight.
Okay, good to know.
I'm just using the early ones to head off trouble. Okay. Yeah, so this thing, how many families in the Bayview completed the census? Now, the question to you guys is, how many of you think that this blue highlighted thing here is a variable? Give me a yes if you think it's a variable and a no if you don't think it's a variable. Thumbs up will work for a yes too. A lot of people.
No. Yes.
Okay. A lot of people think it's a variable. I disagree with you. Okay. It's a parameter. You see, each individual in the population that you are studying, each individual is a family. And by asking just one family, you can find out, did they vote? No, did they complete the census? That's a categorical variable. Yes, no, did you complete it? That's a variable. But the number of them who completed it, that's a parameter. Because to find out how many completed it, you cannot ask just one of them. You have to ask the entire set. It's a characteristic of the population, not a characteristic of any one individual in the population. The number who said yes, is a parameter. Okay. So I'm going to reply to this one. I'm going to say, I think the population you have in mind is, let's always, when we're identifying the population, just start out with the set of all, and we're collecting data from families. We're going to get one, when we write down in our lab book, we're going to write down like one yes, no answer for each family. So the individuals are families. And you said you are interested in particularly people of color. Okay, because you're worried about discrimination or underrepresentation of districts when they hand out benefits. You know, like the amount of money that a district gets to support its post office, you know, depends on how many people are there. Okay. So somehow I want to get that in there, but I got a little issue because if each individual is a family, and then this characteristic is not about families, it's about people, well, you see, I don't know how to do that. You know, you could say families of color. I don't know. I'm white. My wife is Chinese. My daughter didn't really classify herself. So I don't know how you're going to do that exactly. That doesn't mean it can't be done. That just means you got to write a big story if you want to try to explain how you're doing it. And then everyone will know what you did. So the set of all, I'll start with the set of all families in the Bayview. Okay. Now, what's the variable? It's not how many said yes. It's the yes-no categorical variable for completion of the census. And there's not like a quick way to say it in English, but you ask them this yes-no question, and that question, that's the variable. Okay. Population parameter, total number who say yes. It might be better to say what percentage say yes, but you know, this would be a variable. Okay. Should I leave off at this point? Is there anybody who like got a response from me? Okay, so I'm going to leave off this topic. Let me go over here.